When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. Do you understand me? I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions asked. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, peace, family. Welcome to We Charge Colonialism. I just want to be free. That's what this is all about, getting organized, making sure that we deliver a message that that will contribute to the struggle for liberation, for revolution. And if you know you don't have revolution on your mind, you don't have nation building on your mind, this definitely isn't the place for you. But if you understand the colonial conditions that African people are facing every day in and day out, and you want to do something about it, this is definitely the place to be. So peace to everybody that's tapping in. A salute, comrade. Appreciate you tapping in. Make sure you like and share so we can get as many people to tap into this podcast as possible. And if this is your first time being here, We Charge Colonialism, make sure you visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications on whenever we're doing these podcasts. So I'm Kimba Ajore, We Charge Colonialism. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing Darfur or Sudan, what's happening in Sudan. And this is in light of what's like really taking place in Palestine, right? And I don't want us to really lose focus. Or let me say that a different way, but I don't want us to sort of get too distracted on what's happening in Palestine and forget that there's atrocities happening all throughout the continent of Africa and have been happening for a very long time. And the way that we respond to Palestine and the atrocities that is taking place, because the Palestinians are facing colonialism, right? Settler colonialism. But we need to have that same energy for what's taking place all throughout Africa and in the African diaspora. And if we can respond the same way that the world is responding to what's taking place in Israel and Palestine, then I think that we can, that we can get to the business of nation building and liberating African people. So Sudan has been going through an eternal conflict since April 15th. And if we can remember, this is another contradiction. The first genocide of the 21st century that took place was in Sudan, and it was taking place. It was taking place in Sudan, and it was being committed by the Arab population of Sudan against the indigenous African people of that land, particularly in southern Sudan, and other places in Sudan as well, West Darfur, and what transpired, or what happened at the I think 2011, South Sudan had became an independent state, right? Uh, but now there's some internal conflict that's going on in the in Sudan, in the northern part of Sudan, and it's still the indigenous African population is still being impacted. Those people who are still living in Darfur, and there has been a genocide that has been taking place that I think is not getting the type of international recognition, and is being talked about the way that it should be to prevent this from prevent what happened in the early 2000s. And so we don't want this to spiral out of control. So I kind of just want to bring some of this to light in today's conversation. And many of us may be conscious of what's happening, but I definitely want us to, again, not lose too much focus and get caught up in what's happening in Israel. And, in Free Palestine, and this is I did a podcast yesterday to talk about what was happening in Palestine. So this conversation isn't meant to minimize the atrocities that is taking place there. But I think as African people, we have to be very conscious of what's taking place or what's being perpetrated against African people on the continent and around the world, and making sure that we're raising just as much hell for African people as we are for the people of Palestine. So with that being said, though, again, I'll be doing uplifting the Malcolm X Symposium every time I do a podcast. I put the link to the Eventbrite in the chat, the Malcolm X Symposium, which is taking place in Boston, November 10th. I want to make sure that everyone is conscious of this and that you register and that you make your way to Boston. If you're in the area, definitely be there. If you're not in the area, maybe you can book some tickets and travel there. It's going to be a powerful event. It's the 60-year anniversary of Malcolm X's message to the grassroots speech. Again, that link is in the chat. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen right here. So the Malcolm X Symposium honoring the 60-year anniversary of the message to the grassroots speech. And we who are all in this movement, I don't care where you are in the world, if you're fighting for liberation, if you're fighting to end colonialism, imperialism, you probably have been impacted or influenced by Malcolm X in some form or fashion, whether directly or even indirectly. And so this is taking place in Boston right now at MIT. That's the current location, which is subject to change. That's why it's good to register. So if there's any changes in location, you'll be aware of that. So again, come join us for an incredible program as we commemorate the 60th anniversary of Malcolm X's powerful message to the grassroots speech. This symposium will be a gathering of like-minded individuals who appreciate the significance of this speech and its impact on our society. And if you haven't heard the message to the grassroots speech, I advise you, not right now, but after this podcast, you go listen to the message to the grassroots, which is on YouTube. One of Malcolm's most powerful speeches, if not his most powerful speech. And that's the speech when he talks about the difference between a Negro revolution and a Black revolution, right? And he makes the point of how people are using the word revolution loosely. You have a lot of people who are out here talking about they're nationalists or they're revolutionaries, but they're not willing to pay the ultimate price to gain their freedom, right? They're not willing to do what the last poet said. I'd rather be in the grave than live as a slave. And so let me say that whole thing. Say, woe is me, for oppression is worse than the grave. For it is better to live and die for a noble cause than to live as a slave. I done messed that up, y'all, but y'all get the point. So, but Malcolm talks about this in the speech. He also talks about the house Negro and the field Negro. It's a very powerful speech. But he's really making in the speech, he's really making this distinction between those people, those Black people, African people who are fighting to end oppression and exploitation, and those African people who are fighting to integrate into the system of oppression and exploitation. So he's making that distinction. And we need to be clear on those people who are neo-colonialists and those people who are neo-colonialists working in the interests of the colonizer and against the interests of the revolution and revolutionaries. So with that being said, though, make sure you register for that. I'm going to get into the topic right now. So let me share. And peace again to everybody that has tapped in. Appreciate you being here. So what I'm going to go to is this article, and again, just this is from Amnesty International's website. Make sure I go to the right one. Still okay, yeah, this one. So Sudan, civilians still being killed and displaced after 6 months, right? And this was put out a day ago. As the escalation. Oh, before I even get into this, I'm sorry. I will be remiss if I did not acknowledge that today is the founding of the anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party. I couldn't continue without uplifting the Black Panther Party for self-defense, because the Black Panther Party, we just talked about Malcolm X. The Black Panther Party was the organization that was founded a year after Malcolm X's assassination, and their objective was to carry out the program of Malcolm X. So he was a major influence. There were other influences such as Frantz Fanon, Robert F. Williams, the Deacons of Self-Defense, but it was Malcolm X. He was sort of like the base, the foundation of the ideology of the Black Panther Party and their philosophy. So I want to uplift them on October 15th, 1966. They was founded. They put together the 10-point program, and the rest is history. A lot of people, particularly in the United States, you have a lot of people who are in this movement that look to the Black Panther Party, their strategies and what they did in the community as sort of a blueprint of what to do today as we organize, as we organize as grassroots organizers in our community. So now let me get into this. So Sudan, civilians still being killed and displaced after 6 months of conflict, as the escalation in the conflict between the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, and Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, reaches its 6th month today, resulting in the deaths of at least 5,000 civilians, more than 12,000 injured, and over 5.7 million people forcibly displaced. So really quick, I don't know if everybody's aware of who these organizations are or what's going on, but the Rapid Support Forces are made up of the different militias like John Jaweed. Are the Rapid Support Forces are made up of these groups of John Jaweed. And if we remember who the John Jaweed are, these are the paramilitary forces that was let loose on the African population in South Sudan, right, and in other parts. So these were the people who were killing and massacring indigenous African people. These were a group of Arabs who were killing non-Arabs. So I just want us to be clear on who the Rapid Support Forces are. And the Sudanese Armed Forces are no better, right? Because they represent the government of Sudan. And so the government of Sudan and the Janjaweed were working together. They were an alliance, committing this genocide against the indigenous African people, right? And I have to make that distinction between the Arabs who migrated into Africa and those who are indigenous to that land. And because this conflict is between these Arabs and the indigenous people, it's still a conflict over land and resources. There may be some, it's not even all about religion, because a large percentage of these indigenous Africans are Muslim. 70% of the Sudanese population, at one point, maybe a little more than that, but I believe 70%. Before the breakup, before the South Sudan became an independent state, 70% of the population was Muslim, and that was including indigenous Africans. 30% were what they call animists, but people who practice their indigenous spiritual systems. 30% of the population, mostly in the South, right? So I just wanted to give that little background. I want us to be clear on who these people are that's causing hell, that's fighting against each other. They're struggling for power, and control over the government. So I'm going to continue on. Every day, civilians in Sudan are being killed and displaced as the conflict continues to rage. Countless lives have been needlessly destroyed in the last 6 months. And what is important, because while we should care too about this internal conflict that's taking place between these two forces that I don't really give a hell about, to be quite honest, because of the atrocities committed against the non-Arabs. But the problem is like now because of the chaos that's being created in the country, the most vulnerable people are now being attacked, brutalized. Women are being raped. People are being killed, right? They're taking advantage of this chaos to kill those people, those mostly non-Arab people, and not to say that there aren't Arabs who are being caught up in this conflict as well, but they're indiscriminately murdering non-Arabs, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. So justice and accountability are essential for the protection of civilians. The ongoing lack of accountability for the past crimes is one of the root causes of this renewed violence. We welcome last week's ambitious actions from the Human Rights Council establishing an international accountability mechanism to collect and preserve evidence, and look forward to its operationalization as soon as possible. We urge all parties to conflict to cooperate with it. Man, I don't like all of this. Like these nonprofits and UN, security forces, all of this, they may mean well, but at the end of the day, this is not going to solve any of the problems. It's going to take like African unity to really put an end to this. Because a lot of these people, what happens is, and I don't want to get off track, but what happens is it's like sort of a new market and industry is born as a result of the misery and conflicts, the misery of people and the conflicts that take place, right? It opens the door for the creation of new institutions. Now there's resources that's going to go to these institutions, right? Whether it's like Doctors Without Borders, all of these people who are put on the ground, they have resources to sort of like help out the aftermath, though. It's almost like the police. They're not there to protect and serve. They come in after the crime has already been committed, right? After the damage has already been done. But where's the prevention? Where is, who is stopping this from taking place? Where is everybody at? All of these forces, people, states that have all of this wealth and power, military and so forth, right? Not to say that I want these colonizers there anyway, but this is just some serious contradictions, man. So I'm gonna move from this article, and what I want to do is go to this article on same subject, but on what's happening in West Darfur. Here we go. Sudan, civilians at grave risk amid escalating violence in West Darfur. So respondents to reports of escalating violence in West Darfur in recent days, including attacks by the Rapid Support Forces. See, these people again, the Janjaweed, these people, that's who, these are the ones we got to look out for. Why are these people, they should be, where is the international community that's going to come in and try these people for war crimes? Like, they committed a whole genocide. Why are they even in existence right now? Right? All this talk about Al-Qaeda, ISIS, what about these dudes that committed a genocide against African people? Where's the outcry? Right? No, they struggling for power. Nobody, they shouldn't even, they should be, well, let me keep moving on. I don't want to say anything to get me in trouble. And allied Arab militias on non-Arab residents of the region. I'm gonna try this one. Tigera Chikuta, Amnesty International's regional director for East and Southern Africa, said Amnesty International is alarmed at reports of ethnically motivated targeting killings, sexual violence, widespread burning of homes, and mass displacement of non-Arab residents of West Darfur. Ethnic cleansing, right? Ethnic cleansing taking place, particularly in and around the city of El Janina by the RSF and allied Arab militias. This spiraling violence bears terrifying similarity with the war crimes and crime against humanity perpetrated in Darfur since 2003. Even those seeking safety are not being spared. The protection of civilians across the country must be the highest priority. The international community must urgently support the humanitarian response in Sudan and the region at today's high-level pledging event. Millions of Sudanese, both inside and outside the country, are depending on it. How does a place that already experienced a genocide, and this is interesting too, because you think about it, the first genocide of the 20th century, right, which gets downplayed, of the 20th century was the genocide against the Herero people of Namibia, the genocide that took place in Namibia, the Germans who committed that genocide, right? The first genocide in the 21st century, again, is perpetrated or committed against African people. African people have been experiencing genocide in other places too, but it's interesting, right? 20th century, 21st century, right? But it seems as though the genocide of African people always gets downplayed. So again, you know, I feel, and this isn't, again, to minimize what's taking place in Palestine, but as African people, we have to raise our voices just as loud when these crimes, when the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity is perpetrated against African people, as we do with other groups of people. It should be louder, be honest. So I'm just going to go to, again, with West Darfur. I'm going to show this clip. It's about 2 minutes here, 2.5 minutes, speaking about what's happening in West Darfur. Boom. Here we go. Let's get into it.
In camps in Chad, fear is turning to anger. Eager to talk about the injustices they are facing, many are unable to speak. In camps in Chad, fear is turning to anger. Eager to talk about the injustices they are facing, many are unable to speak without crying. Usman was separated from his family when fighting broke out in El Janina in West Darfur. He searched for weeks before crossing the border.
People whom are in Janina now, they are suffering from every side. There is no food, there is no medicine, there is no place to go, there is no place to go to get water. I want to send my message to help those people.
He lost a hand in a previous conflict and says if he doesn't find his family, he will do the unthinkable and go back to streets lined with the dead. to risk meeting the same fate. This territory, the gunman says, is now under militia control. Those who've worked in Darfur for decades blame political neglect, a collapse of state authority, and previous governments who armed certain communities for their own political gain.
The war in Khartoum is a classic battle between two rival forces in a struggle for power. In Darfur, and especially in El Geneina, it is much more existential between communities. It goes to the struggle for land, for water, for use of natural resources, precious metals and minerals.
Refugees say El Geneina is the worst place in the world. Mujib al-Rahman is an African Masalit leader. He says the city is home to dozens of tribes, but one is being singled out and persecuted.
If you see in Khartoum, RSF fight with SAF. But in Al Geneina, RSF fight against Masalit and black people. Daily we lose more than 50 people. Daily.
Mujib says he will return to defend his hometown or die trying. On street level, it is obvious that more and more people are arriving from Sudan on a daily basis. The refugees we speak to say, while it is true that the militias are targeting one specific tribe at the moment, the violence is so widespread, it is affecting everybody. UN calls for a ceasefire have been drowned out by the sounds of war. Aid groups worry the ongoing violence could spread across the region. The Masalit warn, if the militias are not stopped, other tribes could be targeted next. Zain Basravi, Al Jazeera, Adre, Eastern Chad.
Yeah. So, and this is what's happening currently. And this conflict has been going on since April, and it's only getting worse. And this is a struggle that goes back, even if you go back to colonialism. In that video, they talked about the struggle over resources, land, minerals, even water. I mean, nobody can live without water. But even when you go back to where does this, these issues stem from? The British, you're talking about a colony, then there's this transfer of power, and now there's this struggle between two opposing groups trying to capture the state, right? And so the indigenous African people in this country before the split and even after the split, those people who are still stuck under Arab control are colonized people. They were living as a colonized people, marginalized, and it was a conflict. And I think I'll do another a podcast covering this history. But this genocide that took place, part of it was a result of a pushback against the marginalization of those indigenous African people. To continue marginalization and limiting their ability to survive under Arab rule. So, again, I wanted to just uplift what's taking place. Is there something else I wanted to touch on? Last thing I want to touch on before we end this podcast. African unity is so important. Colonialism, like the regime, African unity is the only way that we're going to end this international regime. And I think even going back to Malcolm X, and one of his last speeches, not his last, but when he was at Oxford, and he talked about those people who are in power and how they abuse their power for so long. And Malcolm sort of, you can hear the frustration. He was just fed up with these people who are in control. And I think we have to move with a sense of urgency, and unity is important to make this happen, because we're dealing with an international system. And what happens, that's why what happens in Brazil, those people who are suffering in Brazil or in Jamaica and Haiti, as a result of economic system that they all are part of an international economic system. There's people who are benefiting from the oppression that's taking place. Whatever government is in power, that government is dealing with the international, is a part of the international political economy, right? And that's why, you'll never see the end unless you have places like, like Cuba, right, that is limited in what they can do because they're isolated, which was the same thing that happened to Haiti when Haiti broke away from their colonizer, their enslaver. They was isolated. This is what happens when you're not a part of the international system. So the only way that we can really overcome the international system is through African unity, working together, because we'll have enough people to be able to create a system among ourselves, an international system, without having to deal with these colonizers. So the last thing I wanted to do is pull Nkrumah. Nkrumah is Africa must unite. And I want to leave us with what he says in Africa must unite. I think it's an important message to leave us with. So he says there is, in fact, an interacting relation in these objectives. Imperialism is still a most powerful force to be reckoned with in Africa. It controls our economies. It operates on a worldwide scale in combinations of many different kinds: economic, political, cultural, educational, military, and through intelligence and information services. In the context of this new independence mounting in Africa, it has begun and will continue to assume new forms and subtler disguises. It is already making use and will continue to make use of the different cultural and economic associations which colonialism has forced between erstwhile European masters and African subjects. It is creating client states, which it manipulates from the distance. It will distort and play upon, as it is already doing, the latent fears of burgeoning nationalism and independence. It will, as it is already doing, fan the fires of sectional interests, of personal greed and ambition among leaders and contesting aspirants to power. These and many others will be the devious ways of the neo-colonialism by which the imperialists hope to keep their stranglehold on Africa's resources for their own continued enrichment. To ensure their continued hegemony over this continent, they will use any and every device to halt and disrupt the growing will among the vast masses of Africa's population for unity. Just as our strength lies in a unified policy and action for progress and development, so the strength of the imperialists lies in our disunity. We in Africa can only meet them effectively by presenting a unified front and a continental purpose. Right. So I want to leave us with that, man. Marcus Garvey saw it, Malcolm X saw it, the Black Panther Party saw it, the importance of us coming together, Patrice Lumumba and Nkrumah, these leaders, these thinkers, they knew what it's going to take, or what it will take, for African people to liberate ourselves. And so we have to continue to spread the message of African unity, working together, whether it's Pan-Africanism, African internationalism. If we're serious about getting free, make sure you spread this message of African unity. And I don't care where you from, I don't care, as long as you African. Right on. As long as you African, I don't care where you from. You suffering from colonialism. It's impacting us all. So, hey, peace to everyone. Again, appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all like, make sure y'all share this. And tap in tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll be doing a commemoration to the Black Panther Party for self-defense. What time am I doing that? I'm tripping. Hold on. I might have to change the time. Oh, 6 o'clock. No, the time works. So tomorrow, 6 p.m., tap in right here. We charge colonialism. I'll be uplifting the Black Panther Party, looking at Huey P. Newton's to die for the people, So, I'll probably be going from 6 to 7. So again, first time being here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Everybody have a revolutionary night. Peace and power, y'all.